Hello students, today I am going to explain you the 6th chapter. The name of the chapter is Expert Detectives by Shraddha Dwivedi. Objectives of this chapter are to encourage students to interrogate, making them aware to understand the poor, to make them understand somebody's feeling, and to encourage them to collect difficult information from anywhere. Before starting the explanation, here are the key points of the chapter. Nishad and Maya are brother-sister. They are very curious to know about Mr. Nath. They start interrogation about Mr. Nath. They collect information about him. Maya takes Mr. Nath as a crook. Nishad doesn't agree with her. So, what is the story we are going to read? Here comes the summary of the chapter. Maya, a girl of 10, and her brother Nishad, a boy of 7, were very curious about one Mr. Nath, who had been living at Shankar house for over an year and was their mother's patient. He was a very lonely and thin man and looked starved. Maya was of the opinion that he was a criminal on the run and had lots of money stacked somewhere in his room, while Nishad, on the other hand, was considering the possibility of him being just a poor, friendless soul who had no proper means to sustain himself. However, one thing that both agreed on was that there was something peculiar and strange about Mr. Nath. One day, while playing, one of their marbles went into Mr. Nath's room, and to extract it the children went there. For once they had a look at Mr. Nath and since began debating about him and his possible profession. Maya interpreted the burn marks on his face to be caused by a fire started by the police to turn him out of his house. Nishad thought it to be too far-fetched, though he did not have much in defense of the men. On the Monday after their mamma's birthday, as Maya had to spend the day with a school friend, Nishad went to Mr. Nath's room alone and offered him a chocolate bar, considering him emaciated state. When he later told of his encounter with the men to Maya, she was disappointed that she missed it, but wanted to know more about whatever else her brother had found out. Nishad had had a talk with Ramesh, who carried food from the restaurant to the strange man's room, and found out that every Sunday a talkative, tall, fair, stout and bespectacled man came to visit Mr. Nath. He also found out that Mr. Nath, though did not care what food was brought to him, tipped Ramesh well. Maya interpreted it all as a great conspiracy and saw the bespectacled man as an accomplice to Mr. Nath, visiting him to give part of the money they had looted together. Nishad wondered at his sister's imagination and thought Mr. Nath quite ordinary. Maya rejected Nishad's idea, further adding that many criminals are usually ordinary looking. The next day, their school was to reopen. After the summer holidays, But because of incessant rain, they enjoyed another holiday. Maya took a paper and decided to jot down the developments in the mystery of Mr. Nath's identity. She shared it with her brother and talked about various points like many being scared of Mr. Nath, his not receiving any mail ever, his unfriendly nature, having just one friend, a possible accomplishment, and so on. Nishad countered Maya at various points, but was constantly put down by her, who just wanted to prove that Mr. Nath was a criminal. One day, while playing, one of their marbles went into Mr. Nath's room, and to extract it, the children went there. For once, they had a look at Mr. Nath, and since began debating about him and his possible profession. Maya interpreted the burn marks on his face to be caused by a fire started by the police to turn him out of his house. Maya rejected Nishad's idea, further adding that many criminals are usually ordinary looking. The next day their school was to reopen after the summer holidays, but because of incessant rain, they enjoyed another holiday. Nishad did not like this attitude and asked Maya to stop always referring to the men as a criminal. Maya pointed out the futility of all their snooping if it was not so, but Nishad said that it was not necessary for the man to be a criminal for him to want to know about him. He stormed out of the room saying that he would become the lonely man's friend. Maya noticed his adamant take on the matter and that her theory had no effect on him. Here are the short questions related to this chapter. Please write these questions in your fair notebook. These are the long answers based on the textbook. This also you have to do in your fair notebook. Few more question answers related to the text. You must read them and write them in your fair notebook. Thank you students for patience listening. I hope you have understood the chapter, and for better understanding, read the chapter thoroughly.